In the Mahabharata, we have discussed this a little bit. There is a description about the psychology of parent, especially a mother. Depending upon what level of motherhood or fatherhood you exhibit, accordingly, your child eventually exhibits those qualities, right? And one of the core aspect of motherhood, which is the fourth aspect. The first aspect is dhatri, to bear the child in the womb. The second aspect of motherhood is to give birth, janani. These are easy things to do, biological reality. But the third one requires greater commitment and involvement. That is called as amba. Amba means one who nourishes, right? Increases your internal, external immunity. And the fourth one is called as virasi. The virasi means one who makes her child viryavan, parakramavan, sahasi, right? So the first two are accidental reality many times. Oh, suddenly, I'm becoming a mother now. I became a mother now. But the third and the fourth requires knowledge, commitment, and guts, right? So the third and the fourth one, the difference between the third and the fourth one is in the real psychology of motherhood or fatherhood or parenthood, they would nourish on every aspect. The physical nourishment would be there, the emotional nourishment will be there, the social nourishment will be there. And this nourishment requires the fourth principle of motherhood, which is called as virasi, that allowing their child through the grind of life, right? So it is not simply a kind of an adventure sports which you do at the cost of 10 people protecting you, which they should do. There's no question of that. They should be, because it's a commercial thing. But the virasi is not an adventure sports. Virasi is an adventure disposition. And if you study the scriptures of Sanatan Dharma, they are more concerned about living with certain passion. जीवन केवल एग्जिस्ट करने के लिए नहीं होता. Your life is not there only to exist. Because life which is only meant for existing, eventually the I disappears and you exit from this world. S disappears and you just exit from this world. You move out of this world. So what is the achievement? The achievement is that I was able to protect the physical body. But here, and one was afraid of death. मृत्यु से डरते थे, इसीलिए जीने के लिए प्रयास करते थे किसी न किसी प्रकार से. Some other, I should not die. Nothing should happen to me. Physically, nothing should happen to me. But if you study carefully, the purpose of living was not to have a long life so that I die as late as possible. That was not a success of life. The success of life, it doesn't matter how long I live, do I live for my passion, my swadharma. So when we have this understanding, then the physical protection, it is not neglected. but it is not the priority. Sounds harsh. Huh? In the modern parenting, because the number of children are very less, the attention at point turns out to be obsession about protecting their child physically. Hmm? When the focus is all there on protecting the child physically, the child does not develop the Veera Vrata, the ability to handle the challenges is lost. Huh? Therefore, simple example, if you see 30, 40 years ago, when the sports people, professional sports people or regular sports people had the spirit of enjoying the game, like the game of cricket, it is not that only Gavaskar did not wear the helmet. It was quite common thing you see most players, because in those times the helmet were just now it had come, and there are no such rules that one has to wear helmet only. So they were playing, knowing very well anything could happen with my head, because some of the greatest fast bowlers are bowling you. Now, even if the spinner is bowling you have to put on the helmet. Helmet protects your physical self, but does it create toughness on your mental self? I'm not supporting one should not wear helmet, but the point we are discussing. So previously, the scriptures or the social life also, they would choose that it is better to live as long as possible, but with certain passionate reality, some passion, some substance of their life. And therefore, Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, he tells Arjuna, Shreyam Shreyam Swadharma Shreyan Swadharma Viguna Parodharma Bhayava. Right, in that sloka, he says, while trying to live one Swadharma, Nidanam Shreya, even if the destruction comes, अगर आपकी मृत्यु भी आ जाती है, आपका नाश भी हो जाता है, विद इन दैट नाश ऑल्सो देर इज अविनाशी का भाव. They would experience that avinashi ka bhav. But now what has happened, that because of so much of protection on the physical platform, large number of children, they have a troubled uncertainty about their future, whether it is grades or whether it is job or whether it is settling in the future. I remember talking to a police officer. Unless you face challenges, he gave an example of a robber. When a first time robber robs something, he's afraid of police. He doesn't know what they will do. He doesn't have the experience of getting punished and understanding the consequences or experiencing the consequences. Therefore, there is a greater fear of what kind of consequences he or she will get. So imaginary consequences, please hear this, imaginary consequences has a greater power for one to scare and keep one away from doing the wrong deed. But if they rob and they are caught when the consequences is given to them, they feel, oh, this is what they do. Beat up little bit, it doesn't matter to me. I would not mind paying the price of going to jail, staying in a, imprisoned reality, being beaten by the police for some day and releasing me back. So he said, therefore, many times they only threaten the robber. They do not show them the consequences. They create a fear of consequences, that you are caught now, and you are caught, then you see what we will do. Rather than telling what they will do, they'll only say, remember, you will understand when we do something. So the imagination of what they will do has a greater impact. So therefore, because the modern society doesn't allow anybody for that matter, especially children, to experience the grind of life, the dvandva, the pain, the pleasure, the uncertainty, right? Remaining hungry if you go for an adventurous excursion, right? You prepare so much, there is so much of preparation. So when you go in so much of preparation, that you enjoy your management rather than your uncertainty, your excitement caused by uncertainty. You are happy that you are successful in coming back safe. So the safety becomes a greater concern rather than the experience of that excursion or a journey. Of course, there has to be safety, no doubt. But please try to understand, the the safety was paramount. But more than safety, it was experience is higher than that. No neglect of safety. But if the safety destroys your experience, then why go to such kind of excursions? Hmm? The purpose of a warrior when he goes to the battleground, the purpose of the warrior's battleground participation is not to remain alive, but to perform certain valor. And therefore, interestingly, when Bhishma Dev was making analysis of different warriors, Duryodhana asked this question, who is Maharati, who is Atirati, who is this Rati, who is that Rati. When this question was raised to Bhishma, he gave different people: Bhishma, Drona, Karna, Kripacharya, not Karna, Kripacharya, Arjuna, everybody, Maharati, Atirati, Ardharati, Ekarati. When it came to the disposition of Ashwathama, I'll not talk about Karna, Ashwathama, he said Ashwathama is the Ardharati. Are? He has a Narayana Astra. Ashwathama is a Narayana Astra, and the disciple, student, son of Dronacharya. How would Dronacharya make him only Ardharati? He would want him to be Maharati. He want him to be Adhirati, right? So why did Bhishma say is half a Rati? Ashwathama did not speak anything. Dronacharya did not speak anything. They accepted the observation of Bhishma Dev. And Duryodhan, as far as I understand, asked this question, why? He said, because Ashwathama is extremely attached to living in this world. And for a warrior, wanting to live is the greatest obstacle to become a warrior. जीने की जो आसक्ति है, जीने की सतर्कता होनी चाहिए. One should be alert to live, but one is obsessed to live, then it can't be a warrior, and such warrior can only be half a rati, because in the very opportunity will run away from them. Now, if you extend this example in regards to our life itself like a battlefield, right? If you accept the entire life only itself as a battlefield, imagine in the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains Vairagya and Rajogun, Tamoguna and Sattva-guna. Something is inconvenient for us. Arey, this jhamela hai, I can't do this only. So when you have that attitude, what does it do? It gives rise to giving up things, and that gets the tag of renunciation. But according to Krishna, that renunciation falls into the category of either tamoguna and rajoguna. Huh? So therefore, previously, one of the reason why the children were sent to the teacher's house full-time basis or half-time basis. Lord Chaitanya went to Gurukul not full-time. He would go a few hours, come back to his mother's place. Right? There was no hard and fast rule that you have to go. There were children, as far as I understand in my writing and in my reading also, some people would go for 2 hours. They were very flexible schools. No? There was no such rules that you have to stay 16 years. You have to study 12 years. Because different kids are made of different disposition. They need to stay for some time and come back, do something else also. Right? So Ashwathama in the life itself chose to live on the battlefield. So somebody who's attracted to live at the cost of their journeys, if disposition's journey, then that living does not fall into the category of virasi, neither it will fall into the category of amba. It only falls into the category of dhatri and janani. In fact, janan dene ke baad, after giving birth, rather than nourishing them, they pampered them, they undernourished them. Their spirit of killer's instinct, the gut feeling, usko kuch diya hi nahi. And therefore, slight provocations, little challenges, what happens? Oh, this is I can't handle. We become mini Ashwathamas. And when we become mini Ashwathama, our contribution, our productivity becomes so less, because only those who are willing to battle the realities of life, they only can go higher and higher and higher, right? So therefore the principle is, what is it? Haribol, somebody has to be removed from this.
Yes, just 1 minute.
Yeah. So therefore, when we understand this principle very clearly, at least understand what was the reality. Like there was this story of the great warrior Manoj Pandey, right? Again, the example of warrior is not necessarily that Veerasya means only one who become a warrior. No, that is not the definition of Bhagavad Gita. The definition of Bhagavad Gita, the ability to handle challenging situations and without giving up and progressing, whether you fail or succeed doesn't matter, but you are there on that field to fight. So this great soldier, when he joined the army, right? He joined. They asked him, why are you in the army? You are an engineer. You could have done something else. So then he said, no, sir, I want to join army because this is the place where you actually get to aspire for the Paramavira Chakra. I don't get in the company the Paramavira Chakra. So he got into army, he joined, and the Kargil war happened, and Manoj Pandey was in the Gurkha regimentary. So there was a story before he was deployed in one of the most difficult combat mission, or a mission to capture one of the point. So what happened was, in his regimentary, there was yearly a ritual in the army, in the Gorkha regiment, and the ritual was they have to offer a buffalo as a sacrifice. The question will be asked, "Sir, how can they do it? How can they kill that innocent animal? This is unfair. This is not correct." Right? That is what the immediate response will be. We'll discuss that. So they called upon Manoj Pandey, come on, please come. It is your turn this year that you have to take your khukri and slit, separate the head from the entire body of that big animal. He said, "Oh my God, I can't do this because this is not my background. I'm not a meat eater, never been to a slaughterhouse. How can you expect me to do that?" He said, "You're an army soldier. Being an army soldier, you need to know how to take people's life away and at the same time give your own life for people. दोनों भी करना चाहिए. You should know both of it." No. Then he came and with his one kukri, he separated the head of that animal. Right. So now the question is asked, did it help him to make him more valorous? Because valor is not simply the spirit. Valor is not simply a sentiment. Valor is a reality of life. So therefore, on the battle of Kargil, when he was facing the enemy soldiers, he had to use the kukri. But if he has never, he may have the skill of using the kukri, but if he has never used it in a real life, he can never use it. I was asking somebody that if the army people give you a AK-47 and they bring 50 people who are supposed to be executed, officially the government tells, "Look here, these are the 50 people, you have to shoot them." I guarantee you, those who have never used the weapon, those who have never killed the mosquitoes also, those who have never seen animals being slaughtered, those who have never been to an operation theater, however anger is there in their mind, they will not be able to kill people even though it is authenticized. They are supposed to be given a death penalty. Even a rapist, if he's given a death penalty, do you have the courage to kill him? You may have the energy, you may have the emotion to kill him, but you'll not be able to kill. Why? Because the Veera Vrata has not been inculcated into your or my life. Right. So therefore, it was important for them to realize that kind of spirit in there. I think I've told this story also that one student who was studying one of the toughest army training, the last 2 or 3 months were left, but he was not able to do the rope climbing. And because he was not able to do the rope climbing, the 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 commanding officer, the trainer told him, if you do not pass this exam of rope climbing, you'll be removed from the from this course only. And he had only a few months left to complete his course, and that's like a huge, painful reality for him. And I asked one retired officer, "Sir, what is this? How can they do like this? One small course is not able to complete. How can they ask him to leave? Everything else he has done." He said, "No, it is not about rope climbing. It is the spirit behind the rope climbing, the disposition behind the rope climbing. He has done all other things, but it's stuck here of rope climbing. That does not mean that he's good in jumping, but he's weak in rope climbing." He said, "No, that skill can be learned. There is not even less than 0.00001% who people fail in rope climbing and therefore they're thrown out. Doesn't happen like that." He said there is a problem in the disposition. The training though is getting nicely, so he has to fix his disposition. And when the disposition was fixed, you instantly climb up to the ropes, thick rope, carrying lot of weight, and simultaneously was able to jump into the water, simultaneously was able to walk on the rope. It is not a walking up the rope. Yes, walking up the rope requires training. You know, climbing on the rope requires training. Jumping from 10-story building in the water requires training. But beyond the training, did he or she develop that spirit? So therefore, if that spirit is not developed in any aspect of life, for that matter, then it is easier for us to give up in the name of I want to be safe. You know, the reality is nowadays the number of children or even sports person, even people who are in the entertainment industry, whether it is entertainment or sports entertainment, they have a greater potential of suffering mental disease. The children who are studying vidya, which is makes them liberated, they are suffering from mental anxiety. It's an irony. Vidya is supposed to liberate, but they're suffering anxiety. The film industry, drama industry is supposed to entertain you to such an extent to make you forget some of your anxieties of life, but the performers themselves suffering from anxiety. Somebody is called as a depression queen also, rather than calling as a beauty queen. And in the sports section, where you play sports so that you are, becoming more and more developing that sportive spirit, the fearlessness. But then what is happening? There is also anxiety. If these three places, and there is another place where even the people in the path of spirituality suffer from anxiety. If the spiritual people suffer anxiety, the sports people suffer anxiety, the entertainment people suffer anxiety, the students who are supposed to be educated and liberated, they study anxiety. Imagine what would happen with others, right? Why does it happen like that? Because it is happening wherein the physical safety is given such an important consideration, but their overall growth is not given much consideration. And therefore, on the battlefield of before the war began, our soldiers, they came to Krishna. The soldiers came to Krishna and they said, "My dear Lord, this is our ardent prayers to you. We are praying to you that please pray that we do not become victim of dying outside the battlefield. We want to achieve Viragati rather than Duradrishtagati. We want to achieve Viragati. Therefore, if we have to die, if there is a death which has to happen, because on the battleground, in fact, the entire life is a battleground, death will happen. So, should I only live as long as possible, or should I live with valor, with sahas, with parakram?" But this soldier chose to tell Krishna, we would prefer dying on the battlefield, contributing something meaningful. Imagine. And therefore, this verse from the Mahabharata becomes so pertinent. Dhatri, Janani, and then Amba and Virasi. And therefore, in the Vedas, there are certain prayers, and these prayers are supposed to be chanted. They are like a national anthem. These prayers talk about, the courage exhibited by all class of people. The sailors, the business people, The Indian business people would sail across so many countries in 10th century. Marco Polo explains in his observation there were 50,000 ships. And who are these people? It is not that it's an army fleet. No, yes, there was a navy, but more than the navy of different states, it was the shopkeepers, it was the traders. They want to make money, right? And they would go to those places where the products were extremely rare, which these people had where their local market would grow, bringing them to the Western market, bringing them to the Eastern market, bringing them to the Arabic world, going through all the difficulties and challenges, staying away from the family for 6, 7, 8 months. That is desirable? That is not desirable. But if you want to make such a impact based upon your passion, then you have to take that solid risk and adventure. Huh? And nowadays, what has happened? The concept of sahasa, parakram, has translated into commercial adventure. And the commercial adventure, what does it do? It simply distract people who are confused about their disposition. So therefore, when we understand in the entire life, the battlefield of life, death is never feared. Death is not over glorified. The surrounding of death, the way the death happens, that is not so much of discussed about. Yes, death is one of the four principles. What is it? Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi. But this is not the only principle of the entire Prakriti. प्रकृति ने इसको इसीलिए नहीं बनाया है. Right? Somebody asked this question. Imagine Lord Brahma created the universe and Lord Shiva destroyed the creation. So one is creating, one is destroying. One is creating, one is destroying. It is such a pessimistic idea. Very pessimistic idea. And therefore, between creation and destruction, there is maintenance. Right? Srishti, Sthiti, and Pralaya. The purpose, the feature of Prakriti is there is appearance and there is a disappearance. There is visibility, there is invisibility. It's a concrete and second is destructive. When you make a big building, maybe after 125 years, 300 years, 500 years, the building will come down. You know that it will happen, then why are you so eager to build it when it is going to be destroyed? But the beauty is, this is what we see how Lord Vishnu, while using the philosophy of Nishkama Karma, he brilliantly represents the concept of legacy. Srishti is the purpose of Srishti is not destruction. And the purpose of destruction is not only new creation. In between destruction and construction, or in between construction and destruction, there is this principle of dynamic valor presented by Lord Narayan appearing here, taking avatara again and again and again. Yada yadayasya dharma, yada yadayasya dharma glani, yada yadasya dharma, what is that? Yada yadahi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharat. Right? Whenever there is a decline, Lord Narayan, Lord Krishna has the courage and the valor to deal with it, rather than using the philosophy to avoid it. And therefore, when Mrityu is discussed in the Gita, but the purpose of discussing mrityu is not to fear mrityu. The purpose of discussing mrityu in Bhagavad Gita is to make you passionate about your call and saying, what will happen to me? I'm an eternal soul, nothing will happen to me. Max, I'll be separated from this body. That is desirable, but my journey cannot be stopped just because I want to stay, exist as long as possible. So, therefore, it is an important principle for the parents to take that risk, to the children to take that risk of doing something which is healthy, which is very gladdening, which is very spiritually experiential, and at the same time allows you to learn a meaningful life. And to do that, one has to be conscious adventure. One has to be consciously adventurous. One has to be parakrami, one has to be sahasi, right? And therefore, when feminine and masculine energies are integrated, the feminine energy is about caring, and the masculine energy is about daring. When the daring and caring are married, if some mishap happens, the daring and caring people have the capacity to handle. Dronacharya was basically running an adventure sports complex, and Arjuna was a living life of sahasa on a day-to-day basis. How can you say that? Because Ashwatthama again, right, because of his limitation, because of his attachment to his father and father's attachment to his son Ashwatthama, no problem for affection, but the attachment became so obsessive that Dronacharya couldn't handle the news. It was not even a truth, it was untruth that Ashwatthama Marova. It was never a truth, but he just put down his weapons. Of course, he was told by the Devatas and the Rishis also, but he put down the weapons. On the other hand, Arjuna lost his very dear Abhimanyu, and he basically condemned the concept of war. But what happened? At the right time, again, he stood by the teachings of Bhagavad Gita and took his bow and arrow and led on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So, therefore, those who are valorous, those who want to be valorous, they have the courage to deal with the life situation as it is, and those who are less valorous, they can develop that valor eventually by the grace, by the prayas, and by the karuna of the Supreme Lord. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments?
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. That was very deep. Uh, uh, Prabhuji, as you were talking, I was thinking about my childhood, and fortunately, my mother gave me a lot of freedom. Not that she didn't love me enough, and in that freedom, if I look back, I realized that there were some moments where, it was life-threatening for me. I survived. Now, when I look back as a parent, I have a single child. I also love my child, but I seem to be very protective of my child. I seem to be thinking a lot about her safety, more than possibly my mother thought about my safety. So, and we see this with a lot of parents. I remember, my very good friend, he got a child maybe 18 years back. For the first time, I saw a sanitizer. So before I could enter the child's room, I was asked to sanitize my hands. This concept of, securing your child, keeping the child very safe, comes out of love for sure. But isn't it very natural, or I don't know what? I mean, I know it's hurting the child, but what does one do?
That's we are basically, again, as I said, consciously or unconsciously, the concept of loving and securing the safety of a child is making the child more and more delicate. Sometimes people bring water from America for their child, thinking that, this water is allergic, right? That's an insult to the child. That's an insult to the prakriti. You know why it is insult to the prakriti? Because prakriti within the child and mother prakriti have the power to help you adopt. And in the course of adopting of one's own personal body, that is prakriti, and the prakriti around us, it may take some time. It may take 2 3 days, it may take 5 days, 6 days, right? And that 5 6 days you may go through the process of grinded by certain loose motions, right? So when this happens, the child for the rest of her or his life, it's not protected but it is imprisoned. Right, I remember going to a school where one of the celebrities' son or daughter, I don't know, I didn't see. They told me they were studying, and the child was surrounded by 9 bodyguards. Is it protection or is it imprisonment? That they have to see. What does it affect the child's psychology? When the child does not learn the art of protecting, defending oneself from sometime, very tough children, right? Then he or she will always need a protector from outside. Therefore, I said the conclusion of our discussion was it should be a harmony between caring and daring. If it is only caring, the child will be very delicate. It is only daring, there are greater risks of child being harmed forever. But it is a concept of caring and daring, then the probability of child being safe and the probability of child being passionate for some greater cause will be fulfilled. And in the bargain of making them caring and daring, sometime there are certain realities, and they are unfortunate realities also. They would happen. Somebody breaks their bone, somebody has some kind of fracture issues, right? Now you cannot, yes, you take the teacher school to the task, asking them you have to make your system more stronger, but telling them don't take to such kind of trips only, that is useless, let them study focus, you know no, that means you are not seeing the other aspect of child's growth. Child is not synonymous to grade. Other day one young teacher was telling that the parents, unfortunately, nothing to be blaming parents here, not we are not here to blame parents. The surrounding has become so much that the guardian of that child were more focused on the grade rather than upgrading the life skill of that child. So therefore it is important that one should care for their child, willing to lay down their life, but not at the cost of laying down their life's passion. That could be extremely unfortunate for the growth of the child.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji, about how to integrate the caring and the daring part of it. We request our participants to ask questions. If you have a question, please raise your hand. or if you would like to put your question in the chat box. Yeah, till we receive questions. I was talking to a psychologist some time back, and she said that there are a lot of children who are now seeking psychological help. They seem to be very fragile these days. So maybe we are contributing to their fragility. Uh,
Yes, yes, that is what we are discussing, and that happens because care side becomes extremely much more than the daring side. So that's combination of caring and daring, will help them to contribute much greater to their own life and to the life of others.
yeah. Puji, one more thing what we have seen is that there's a sense of entitlement, that I deserve this, you know. So do you think that also contributes to
That's what. Therefore, the tough love, the world does not give you any entitlement. Nobody, whether it is Virat Kohli or whether it is anybody, right? They may be given extra resources, facilities to defend themselves why they are there in the team. Imagine next 15 test Virat Kohli does not play. You think the world will tolerate that? This is the reality of life. It doesn't matter who you are. You know, the life places you in such a situation where you are basically supposed to be valorous, right? When they become valorous, then their power to protect themselves and protect others becomes increased. Therefore, do not put children in the imprisonment in the name of protection, because they lose the power of ultimately slowly learning the art of negotiating with the world, because world is unfair place, not because God has made it unfair, because there are people who are unfair, right? And because the world is unfair place, therefore the art of bargain becomes extremely important. you know so therefore, how the world operates, and the world allows only to those people who are tough and strong and resourceful to survive and flourish. And therefore, again, Krishna, you know made the Pandavas good, but said move on. Along with being good, become tough also, right? So they can bargain. And imagine, Duryodhan was not willing to give 5 villages also. So what can you do then in such a condition? If the Pandavas are not trained to defend and fight themselves, they would write a book, what to do. Our people did not give us anything, so better I become philosopher. Many times people take the shelter of philosophy to exhibit their cowardice. Huh? When the children, what was I saying? What did I say, Deepak?
you spoke about the five villages.
Yeah, so what would Pandavas do? They talk philosophy. Okay, what can be done? Ultimately, what is the point in having a kingdom? Better to be, content internally rather than fighting externally. No, the inner reality is for your spiritual growth. The external reality is for the legacy's growth. Therefore, the concept of forgiveness without the concept of uh, justice makes you cowardice. It allows the legacy of exploitation to continue for long time. So when the legacy of exploitation continues for a long time, somebody will rebel. This is not fair. They said, I don't care. I'm going to fight it out. When they try to fight, In the beginning, there may be reversal because there is a long gap from being completely forgiving and looking for justice. There are some bali chadana padega, but eventually those who fight for justice without giving up the forgiveness tendency, right? When you harmonize forgiveness and justice, because you need forgiveness for your inner growth and you need justice for the growth of the society, right? So therefore it is important for us to understand that only forgiveness is dangerous. Forgiveness without justice is cowardice, and justice without forgiveness is brutal revenge. And therefore, Lord Krishna, after the death of the Kauravas, this is so fascinating. I can't, it's so fascinating, going and begging forgiveness after giving justice to the Kauravas takes great valor. There was no revengeful attitude. Krishna taking the Pandavas to the house of Dhritarashtra after slaughtering all of his 100 sons. Can you imagine? Not that you're going and begging forgiveness for saying, okay, I'm sorry, made a mistake of killing. They're going there to tell Uncle Arya Dhritarashtra, this had to be done. There was no choice for us. Your son forced us to do, but we have nothing more than this. We wanted justice. Therefore, please, we beg your forgiveness for causing you pain. Not regretting for giving him pain, because they did not give him pain, he invited pain. You understand? So that's a very interesting and important principle.
Yeah, thank you very
So
much.
there is a question.
Yeah. So, how
The,
can a mother focus on these two aspects of upbringing and inculcating valor while the mother is pregnant, and even the duality aspect?
no, just that's what. No, the question is, present day children are fragile, or unconscious parenting makes children fight for themselves and find their own purpose. It's a combination of the two, basically. Unconscious parenting and fragile children. So so-called conscious parenting is imprisoning children in the name of protection, right? And and pampered children, those who have all the resources for them, you know they cannot digest. Imagine, like other day somebody was telling, some of their student friends went to some, you know for excursion, and just cold water bath in the Himalayas made everyone become sick, other than one or two students. Why? Because their eating habit was very pampered, their journey was very pampering, so they couldn't acclimatize to the nature. The pleasing nature to see is also ruthless, right? If you cannot handle it, it's a troublesome, it's a challenge, right? So therefore, like, there is an example when Aurangzeb captured the great Sambhaji Maharaj and killed him, slaughtered him. But he was such a ruthless and such a shrewd person, right? He did not kill Sambhaji Maharaj's son and his wife. He took them to Delhi and gave all the pampering facilities to the son of Sambhaji Maharaj. So when he was released from Delhi, right, when he came back to Maharashtra, he was a good person, but he did not fight battle like his father and his grandfather fought, because Aurangzeb took away that education, that training, and that spirit, right? So he wanted him to become fragile, and it was too late for him to go back to the fields and train himself and learn the battle as Shivaji Maharaj learned from the early childhood. So the combination of Shivaji Maharaj and Jijabai is the conscious parenting of Jijabai and non-fragile nature of Shivaji Maharaj created such conscious mother and such non-fragile son. Right? Which mother would send her son to fight a big Rakshasa like Afzal Khan, knowing very well that he had killed Shivaji Maharaj's brother? Why would he send him? He would say, as long as I have my son, it doesn't matter even if I have half a village, at least my son is there. She took that risk. Of course, she did not push him, she had inspired him, and therefore, when Shivaji Maharaj came there, he knew the challenges of facing, you know, Afzal Khan, but he prepared himself. He took all care, put all kinds of armor which was not visible. So cared for his body. But along with that, he has Vaganaka. He dared for his kingdom. So caring for his body and daring for his kingdom, that combination created such a history, right? And therefore, yes, it's a combination of both. And again, one of the psychological understanding is at the end of the day, at the end of the day, the living entity does not have the choice than to be valorous, than to be strong and to grow. If the surrounding provides the facility, the surrounding should provide the facility. The parent should take the responsibility of bringing the child to this world. But unfortunately, if the child did not get it, like that story, I'll conclude with this, that a father had two sons, twins, and the father was one of the worst father you could ever have. Drunkard and abuser. He would drink and beat his sons. After 20 years, 25 years, somebody met both of the sons. One son followed the footsteps of the father, became a perpetual drunkard and abuser. And other son became extremely responsible, grew his life, he defended and provided for himself and his family. And somebody asked this question to the drunkard son, why are you like this? And the son said, what do you expect of me after having such a father? Sorry for him, right? We should feel sorry for him. The point is feeling sorry for him and he remaining in that position, playing that victim card, only made him exactly like his father. And the second guy, when he was asked, why are you like this? How could you do it to yourself in this way? He said, what do you expect after having such a father? He said, I had to change my life. I have to struggle with my life. I didn't want to go through what my father went. The statement was same. What do you expect after having such a father? But the disposition was completely different. And therefore, as we were discussing, the care and the dare. The uncaring, unconscious parent create a lot of pain to their children. The conscious parents and alert child, the symbol of caring and daring, is the beautiful example of Jijabai and Shivaji Maharaj. We'll stop here and meet next week. Thank you
Thank
very
you very
much.
much, Prabhuji, for this very insightful conversation. Yes, we need to integrate so many elements in raising a child because the child in you will never leave you. Thank you very much. We'll meet again next week for another interesting conversation with Prabhuji.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you. Hare Krishna.